You see what I did there?
Oh, yes, I see. Now I see.
Hello, welcome to Quackcast number 331. We're doing the Retcon Quackcast. No, I'm tricking you. This is Quackcast number 333, and we're doing Retcon again. We're retconning the Retcon, aren't we, Baines?
You sure fooled them. I bet they feel silly now.
Oh, yeah, those dicks.
Yeah.
Those
They're like, what? 331? What? Because they're keeping track.
Oh, they have been, religiously.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, people. You are the genius, beautiful couple of people that still listen to the Quackcast. Thank you. Thanks for listening to us. And I'm sorry for doing that to you. But we're going to be talking about retconning again because Baines did a whole news post about it and it was really interesting. He titled it, Where's Chuck? Which is...
Where's Chuck?
Yeah, where is Chuck? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? That's the whole point of it. Where did Chuck go?
Just like jumping the shark, Where's Chuck is a reference to the show Happy Days, the legendary sitcom there.
These happy days are yours and my happy days.
Exactly. And when the series started, it was the Cunningham family, Richie, the middle child, Joni, younger sister, and older brother, Chuck. And I remember a scene when I was a kid, like watching where Chuck and Richie played basketball, and Chuck beat him 26-24. And Richie later said, well, yeah, but he spotted me 24 points at the beginning of the game. So Chuck was like the superior older brother. And apparently, I don't remember this. I don't remember what the guy looked like or anything, but he appeared like 3 times, was played by 3 different actors. And then the character was just quietly kind of dropped.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-child family.
Whatever happened to Chuck?
Yeah.
They never mentioned it afterwards. It was just disappeared, gone.
Yeah, just to sort of just to rewrite quiet behind the scenes retcon.
They used to do a lot in those old shows, didn't they?
Yeah, no, different culture, I guess. I mean, people noticed, but there wasn't really a culture of let's explain this, I guess.
Yeah,
it's like,
this
we'll
is
just
canon.
go with it.
Let's write this down. Yeah. The timeline of Happy Days. We have to. This is recorded in like the 70s and the 80s, but it happens in the 1950s. Okay, so we have to go through, work out when's the Kennedy assassination happening. Oh, no, that's the 60s. When's the space
the Cuban
race
Missile Crisis?
Yeah, Cuban Missile Crisis. Bad pigs, all that. When's this happening? Yeah, exactly. But before we get too deep into that, we have to mention...
Now we can watch Jackie Gleason while we eat. Well, that was Back to the Future.
Jackie Gleason. We have to mention our featured comic. So the featured comic, take it away. Featured comic art.
Hello, this is Quite Agaxe, and the feature I've selected for this week is Una Garza Negra by Garza Negra, and it is rated M for mature. 1 doc, 3 people, Una Garza Negra, the Black Doc. It is sunset at a small pier as 2 men sit silently side by side when one of them breaks the silence. The 2 men have an exchange of small talk when the quietest man begins a philosophical discussion about society and how appearances result in preconceived notions on how we judge groups. The pacing is slow and beautiful and reflects a small scene from everyday life. The mood reflects that of Vladimir and Estragon in Samuel Beckett's play, Waiting for Godot. The art is so gorgeous with its genuine line work. The illustrations are the real deal with its rawness and limited use of digital tools. In addition, all the font is hand-lettered, which give the conversations a realistic quality. Step on the dock and read Una Garza Negra, rated M.
And that was the feature. Okay, so next up we have the featured music by Gum Wallace, and this week Gum Wallace has given us The theme to Lego Space. K-Dog's comic, Lego Space. It's block time! The sound here brings to mind the techno-mechanistic world of Lego, and especially the bright and glittering, transparent, blocky world of space Lego. Vectors, angles, and joins. K-Dog is the author of Lego Space, and this is a comic rated E, but that's beside the point. This is Gum Wallace's music for Lego Space, so read the comic and listen to the music while you're reading it. Take it away, Gum Wallace. Thank you so much for that, Gum Wallace. That was lovely. Ooh, gets you tingly, doesn't it, Baines?
That had such an emotional resonance. I won't say which emotion, but I think when you hear it, it's obvious what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, the emotional load. Oh my god,
yeah.
I have to go.
That's what my nickname used to be. That
emotional load.
I don't think they meant it in a good way.
It does the emotional load. I love it. So, retconning. Yeah, that was popular in the old days with a lot of shows. They would do. I'm thinking Bewitched. Well, it wasn't that much of a retcon.
Oh, with the recast, you mean?
Yeah, Darren got
what, Bewitched. Like Bewitched is maybe most famous for that now.
Yeah.
Like when you hear Bewitched referenced, it's about the Darren, the other Darren.
Darrens. But in those guys, as you said, people didn't really make a big thing of it. You just watch it. Oh, it's a different guy. Oh, well, whatever. The show's still going on. I'll deal with it.
I used to watch Days of Our Lives when I was a kid. Like we would spend summers at my grandmother's, so she got us addicted to Days of Our Lives.
Oh, yes.
So we'd watch. My brother and I would watch it, and it was like I remember one time where like the show started, and this text appears over the screen as the first scene plays out, and it's like, the part of Mr. Brady will be played by blah, 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 blah for this episode. It's like a completely different actor looking completely different. And they just said, oh, he's played by this guy on this episode. It's just like, wait, what?
Deal with it, suckers. Deal.
Breaking the illusion a little bit, but you kind of go with it. You know?
Game of Thrones has been... I haven't even ever seen a single episode of Game of Thrones, but I do know things about it. And I know that in the first season of Game of Thrones, they had various actors playing various roles. And in seasons beyond that, they had different actors playing the same roles. And it says, you have to...
Is it noticeable?
Yeah.
Are they heavily made up? I haven't seen that show either.
They're completely different. I've seen things about it. And yeah, you just deal with it. So you retcon it in your mind, I think. So, okay, you have to imagine this same guy was in it the whole time and he looked this totally different way to this guy, you know, this dark-haired, short-haired guy, as opposed to this huge guy with long blonde hair, you know, that kind of thing. It's that.
Wow, that's kind of surprising. I mean, I remember seeing that on side characters on Deep Space Nine, which I was a major fan of. They were usually alien characters, side characters, who it was still noticeable.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of latex rubber on their face, so it was less noticeable than it would have been if a human character was recast. But I could still tell. I remember Gul Dukat's daughter being played by maybe 3 different people. Quark's mother, who those Ferengi are completely covered in makeup, obviously.
Yeah.
She was originally played by Andrea Martin, who's I think still a well-known comedic actor, and recast after her first appearance. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, just an aside of just something. It doesn't even have to do with Deep Space Nine, but you know the one who plays you know the Betazoid character from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah.
Whatever name, Doctor something or other. I can't. Anyway,
Deanna Troi.
Deanna Troi. That's it. Her mum, who is always a bit of an emotional load. She actually did the voice of the computers. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that was her doing the voices for all those Star Trek spin-offs. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, everything. That's incredible. That's
that actress.
I'll go on.
No, it's not a retcon. No, that actress though played, for anyone who cares about Star Trek. I'm sure somebody probably does who's listening to this. The Cage, the original Star Trek pilot with a different captain and half of a different cast, and Spock was on it, had this female character called Number One. She was only identified as Number One. Yeah. A very kind of ahead of her time female character in this position of authority, was also played by Majel Barrett, which was cool. And there was a novel, a Peter David Star Trek novel, where he sort of had the first half of the novel was that cast from the original pilot. So Number One was there, the original Doctor was there, the original Captain Pike. Yeah. And so they, during this little part of the novel, they upgrade their computer systems on this alien planet to give it voice interface. And they use Number One's voice.
Oh, that's beautiful.
As a neat little, Peter David always does that, these kind of neat little
it all ties in.
Easter egg things. Yeah. So anyway, that's got nothing to do with retcons. I mean, I guess that is kind of a retcon.
It is. You're
unrevealed.
The whole thing, yeah. Because actually that first episode of Star Trek is a retcon. Or, yeah, it is a retcon. Because that was the pilot episode of Star Trek. Which was rejected. It was never used. And
I'll say it every time it comes up, which I always bring it up, but it was great. It was an excellent episode of television.
It was. So
ahead of its time, man. Really
they
good.
re-edited that episode to have Pike in the wheelchair and everything like that, because that wasn't originally how it was done. To make it fit in with the current series that was ongoing.
That's right. So, to save money, they used almost all the footage from that episode as a flashback.
Yeah.
To show what happened to Captain Pike, or to show the history or whatever of Captain Pike.
And because you have the rest of the same actors, Dr. Spock, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Spock was there.
He's
Dr. Spock.
So, Mr. Spock was there, all that kind of thing. So you're seeing an earlier version of the cast and the way they act. So Mr. Spock,
it's great. Yeah.
Who never laughs, who never smiles, because that's against his culture. You see him laughing and smiling in wonder as he looks at the new planet. And there's all this. So it's a perfect example of a retcon. So there you are.
Yeah.
There was a point to that.
It's true. There you go.
It all makes sense. And they do retcon heavily in Star Trek, because even in later on they've got better makeup technology. Everything works a lot better. So suddenly Klingons look far different to what they used to. And you have to now explain when you go back to the old stuff, which they do in Star Trek, because it's heavily, the show is heavily dependent on canon.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have to explain, and they did in Deep Space Nine. They went back in time to an older time in Star Trek, and they noticed all the Klingons without the stuff on their heads, and they asked Worf.
Yeah, they're like,
hey.
"Wait, what? Those are Klingons? How?"
And Worf says, "We don't talk about it."
Yeah, we don't talk about it. Great. That's a great moment.
That's very cleverly done. And I think the way they retconned that to make sense is they said there's some kind of disease that made them lose their facial features for a time.
Oh yeah, later on they did. I didn't watch Enterprise, the prequel series, but I think that's where they actually tried to explain it. Which that doesn't sound. I like the idea of just making a joke out of it. It's like we don't talk about it with outsiders, I think is what Worf says.
Yeah,
just as a fun little thing,
The way you could have spun that is say, oh, it's just it was a like a cultural fashion at the time. Everyone's getting plastic surgery. That was
Yeah.
all vain about it, trying to look like these cool, handsome-looking humans, and hating
And
ourselves.
it was just a fad, and it went away, and we let our ridges grow back up.
We stopped trying to be Mongolian, and not Mongols. That's what they were meant to look like in the original. Yeah, we do this now. So Star Trek's beautiful for it because they go back in time all the time. They're always going back in time to do things. So you have to.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty unique. Like it's kind of the thing where you would either have to, or you'd get in a position where it would make sense to have to address some of this stuff because you're jumping back and forth in time. It's a franchise that stretches across, decades in reality, centuries in the fictional universe, and it's kind of neat to see some of that stuff.
They had to.
And then, of course, the whole Star Trek universe was retconned in universe with the movies, right?
Oh, God.
They actually did a complete reboot, but made it part of the universe, like with the time travel thing, created a new...
How it fits.
It does fit, and it works, it creates a new timeline, so these characters can grow up, and there can be differences kind of thing, because it's a different timeline because of time travel, and Leonard Nimoy Spock can actually appear in that movie. Pretty damn clever, I must say.
You're right. Was he in the first or the second one? First one he was in.
He was in the first one. I think he makes a short appearance in the second one, but yeah.
And then he died, so he can't be in it anymore.
Sadly, so.
For real, he died this time.
Yes. I've been dead before.
Oh, damn it. Damn you, Nimoy.
This is getting way geeky now that Pitface left. This got way geekier all of a sudden.
It is. All right, let's talk about retconning.
Yes.
Genius Cam made a comment in my original post about the news post, and he said, okay, so years ago, WebSnark categorized all the types of retconning.
Oh, yes.
So
I saw that message and read that link too. Fascinating article.
Yeah, it's
worth a look.
It's not just going back and rewriting a thing. You can do all different kinds. So he says the weak kind of retconning, not weak as in bad, but weak as in not a strong kind of doing it, is to show different stories from a person's timeline. So you've completed a story, or you've gone and shown this particular thing from beginning to end. Now you're showing a tale from a bit earlier on in this person's timeline. That's a weak retconning. So you're not having too much of an effect on the later story.
Just something that you didn't know about this character. So we'll show you that story, that's great stuff, Add some dimension to the character, and hopefully it doesn't contradict anything that we know of the character. Yeah.
And if you do it, say in Pinky TA, I do this. I tell a particular story in the first part of it, and then later on I do another story from earlier on in her timeline. But I don't contradict anything that happened later, because Pinky TA is not a really strong canon where you have everything like, okay, this is this early kind of stage in this character's life, and then we're going on and on. We're showing as things go on, like an origin story, like with superheroes, how you say, okay, Superman crashed to the earth in a little pod, and then he was raised, and blah blah blah. So if you tell a story earlier on in his life and go back, then you're going to have a lot trickier time not to trip over yourself, which they do in Superman over and over. Like, they'll show, okay, this is Superman, these are tales from when he grew up, and they show him meeting Lex Luthor as a young teen or whatever.
Yes.
Lois Lane and Lana Lane.
I mean, the whole existence of Superboy, of having a Superboy series, is a retcon.
Yeah, and it's
just in itself, because that was not the original story. He didn't become Superman until he came to the city.
It's done really badly, basically. But in comics, you're used to that. Not that comics are done badly, but we're used to the fact that we just we accept this kind of stuff. we look at it as, we don't implicitly look at it as being a different timeline or a different parallel universe, but you do if you think about it logically. And you don't think about the later Superman and think, oh, but he didn't meet Lex Luthor when he took over Metropolis or whatever. He met them when he was a teen, and they've already had beef together. So, all this is, he didn't meet Lois Lane working at the Daily Bugle or whatever he works at. It was back in high school. I remember, because you don't connect those things. You don't make a fuss about it. You accept it, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's...
Same as Little Archie. Less of a big deal, I think, because I think you saw Archie meet Veronica for the first time in 1941 or something. So who cares? Suddenly it's all... But I remember reading, not really liking Little Archie that much. Not because it was a retcon thing, but just because like this has all been going on since they were kids, all the same relationships and everything. It was kind of weird to me. It's like...
Oh my God, It's freaking me out. It's time repeating over and over and over.
Yeah.
Poor
We're stuck in a loop, man.
It's Groundhog Day. Forever going through the same old cycles. So that is a kind of retcon. And yeah, depending on if it's like Pinky TA again, it's done really it's not done too strongly, so it doesn't have too much of a problem. And then sometimes it can have a bigger problem. Even the early Indiana Jones stories, it's done in such young Indiana Jones. I think it's
the TV series, yeah,
which is really great and entertaining. But because it's done such a strong kind of way of doing it, you don't really look at that as being a logical continuation of the Indiana Jones story. You almost look at it as being a separate world. This is a different Indiana Jones almost.
Yeah, it's an alternate universe, kind of, even though they don't say that, obviously, in a series like that. Yeah. Just sort of do that in your brain.
So it doesn't really give you any more insight into the later Indiana Jones. You can't really see it as the same character. To me,
right.
Anyway, I didn't. I look at the later Indiana Jones and I think he is a fully formed character. You don't even wonder where he started out. You just see him.
No.
As he is, and you think that makes total sense. You don't have to think now, did he start out as a budding, like an adventurous child or whatever?
How did he start this adventuring thing?
Where did he learn to use a whip that well?
Yeah, all these questions that nobody ever asked, they answer in the third movie there. Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, I loved the young Indiana Jones, but yeah, so we do accept that in a different way. So
sure,
that is, I think that's category 1, they call it. Now revealed, a lost tale of the hero. Category 2 is the story you thought you knew. Oh my God. I hate these ones. This is the same story told from a different perspective. So you thought you knew all that. You thought you knew this origin story, but this is a slightly different version because this other character is going to tell you about what happened.
Right.
And that can change, you have an emotional investment in the story because it went on a particular way, blah, 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 blah. Everything made sense and fit in. Now they're going to tell you a slightly different version of it because you didn't get the actual, real full view. This other character is going to lend you a better view of this. That isn't always bad, but often it can be. Can you think of any examples?
Right.
Ender's Game is a good example of that.
Okay.
It's great story. No, not the movie, the written version. Great story. And then he does this. Yeah. Orson Scott Card does another story about this character called Bean, who is a minor character in Ender's Game. So Bean is like a smaller version of Ender. He's really super clever, but not quite as clever as Ender. And Ender uses him as a lieutenant, and they helps him defeat the evil aliens and all that kind of stuff. Well, in this story, I can't remember what it's called, but this tells the story from Bean's perspective. And from Bean's perspective, Bean is actually the genius. And he's just setting Ender up to be the leader because he knows everyone will follow Ender.
Oh, wow.
But Bean is really the genius behind it, and it tells the history of Bean, how he, became this genius.
Right.
And it's super...
Beanius.
Idiot. It's super irritating because you know the character Ender. He is the hero of the story, and he did everything because he did this, and it's like really well set up emotionally. Ender's journey from here to there, and suddenly that's all been exploded because Orson Scott Card wants to have this new character be the true genius, and
that's very weird.
Yeah, it's dickish.
Why would I do that? Yeah,
but as I said in the last Retcon Quackcast, Ender, Scott Card always does this in his stories. He was always going back and George Lucasing it every single.
Right. Yeah.
Out the arseholes. Yeah, so that's the story you thought you knew. But I suppose this does happen in a lot of comics and things as well. You might tell a story.
It must. I can't think of any examples offhand, but yeah.
Yeah, so you tell a story from Lois Lane's perspective, or Lana Lang, or someone like that. I don't know.
Yes, the real Superman characters. We're just setting up Clark Kent to take all the glory.
Yes, exactly. They built him up into a hero, you know.
Yeah,
so they
exactly.
took all the photos. She's a news reporter.
It's all done with mirrors and.
Yeah. So they covered up all the disasters, all the times he accidentally killed someone.
Oh, well, that I can see that might be kind of cool.
Yeah,
like someone's covering up the horrible things as a result.
Yeah,
of Superman's adventures. Yeah.
It's all publicity by Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah,
I haven't seen bloody anything to do with Superman for decades. I can't remember. I still remember this. The Daily Planet they worked at, not the Daily Bugle.
These are iconic. These are just in the culture, right? Like you don't have to watch this stuff to know it all.
It's intrinsic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all. I think. Yeah, it's even brung up about the Superman stuff. So Superman is a retcon, as we said in our last cast, because he could only leap tall buildings in the beginning. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Yeah. That's all he could do.
Right.
Fly as fast as a speeding bullet. All that. He couldn't fly. He couldn't do any of that other stuff. That was all given to him later. Kryptonite wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
He didn't give a crap about anything.
Yeah.
But suddenly, he had all those problems. So,
well, the kryptonite's the only one that's a problem. The other things are good things.
Exactly.
Just expanding the powers, and then they pulled back later, like decades later, they pulled back on his powers a bit to give him, rather than giving him new powers every issue.
Yeah, they take back the powers in the end.
Yeah.
So Category 3 is the real story you thought you knew. Oh, God. So how's that different from the other one? The story you thought you knew, and this is the real story you thought you knew. So how can I explain this one quickly?
I don't know. I read the article, but I didn't really go in depth with the categories.
Okay, so that one is sort of the same but worse, basically.
Right.
It gets worse. So everything you knew about the story is wrong, and this is the real kind of thing that is done. Yeah, so
it's kind of, there's some crossover with the previous category.
Yeah, it's just more
Ender's Game. Yeah.
So that has the effect of alienating readers. Like I think last time in the last podcast we talked about how retcons aren't always bad. These things can be good. These things can lend you extra perspective on what's happened. They can expand,
fill things out. Yeah, expand it, deepen it. Yeah.
Exactly.
But this is kind of where we get into the betrayal category, where it's not just filling in some blanks. It's like changing what we understood.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I think this article goes on to talk about Spider-Man. Like, is this where we get to things like, maybe that's another category, but where we get to like, well, Uncle Ben never died. Yeah. He was faking it or something like that.
I think that must be
that would be like.
Yeah, I think that's a category 4. So category 4, they say the story you thought you knew was right, but now there's been a change. So a change. That might be the Hydra kind of thing, the Spider-Man.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, everything was went down one single path. But now they've just changed. Yeah, they went in Spider-Man. His history has all changed. And they claim it's minimal, but, it has a huge effect. So Uncle Ben,
right.
I think that's Spider-Man. He never dies. And
I was just saying, I don't know if they ever did that. That's just a hypothetical. Yeah. I don't think they actually said he never died. That's like essential to the character kind of thing that he died.
Yes, and suddenly that's a huge, huge, huge change in every.
If they did that, I don't know. I'm sure they didn't do that.
They probably did.
Spider-Man's got enough problems. We'll get into that later if you want to. There's a sort of an infamous retcon of the worst kind that's Spider-Man related.
All right, should we go through the rest of these or?
Yeah. Keep going. He might even talk about it in that article.
Well, I'm not going to read everything that he's read.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All right, so chapter 5 is meet the new hero, not the same as the old hero because that never happened. So how do you explain that?
I hurt myself with that gasp.
Oh, you do. You get lightheaded.
Yeah.
How does he explain this? So, finally we have the major event, the big one, the big block of cheese in the White House lobby, the retcon that completely starts everything over. The retcon called
like a reboot.
Oh,
yes.
Reboot retcons. Yeah, so are they really reboot? Are they really retcons? Well, they are, I suppose.
It would be the extreme version of a retcon, yeah. And like I said, with Star Trek, it can be done even in universe, That was basically a complete reboot, although old Spock still is running around. But essentially, like all the characters start over and like everything can be different.
Yeah, different and yet the same.
So it's the most expansive retcon there is, I guess.
And it works.
It's the reboot, yeah.
And it's been done in very weird ways in the Marvel movie universe, I think we mentioned last week, because that's been going on for quite a few years now. Started with the first X-Men movie, really, I think, and expanding to more things. I'm thinking about, say, the X-Men movies mainly rather than the rest of the Marvel movies. So we've got all these X-Men movies. Yeah. They've been going on and on and on. And same actors a lot of the time. Hugh Jackman, at least. Halle Berry, people like that, in the same roles. But basically, the universe in these movies now is totally different to the movies they started with. There's no canon. There's no...
Yeah, well, they did the one time travel movie that sort of... I guess they used that as an excuse to kind of rearrange things and like...
They did.
It's kind of weird. Yeah, that one's kind of weird.
They've been resetting things as they've gone along, and they haven't cared, really. And it works for them, I suppose, because it's actually getting better. The way these movies are done often. I mean, the time travel one was fantastic.
That was an amazing movie, yeah.
I think the one after that people don't like as much.
I wasn't crazy about it. Loved Logan, of course, which was a sort of future alternate reality or whatever.
Yeah, I've got to see that.
It's very good, very sad, very good, just good and sad. And
good, sad, good, sad, but good.
So good.
Sounds like a bit of an emotional load there, Baines.
Well, it is. It's definitely a heavy load. Powerful shit. The powerful stuff.
I'll have to see that very soon. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
So, tell us about this Spider-Man infamous.
Well, there might be, if anyone's listening to this who's a comic book person, there's a chance you know it way better than me. So I haven't even read the comics. I just read about the phenomenon because the anger spread far and wide. So yeah, I live under a rock and I caught wind of it.
You have to grit your teeth when you say that. The anger.
So there's I guess the editor-in-chief, I believe, had a bee in his bonnet about Spider-Man being married, which he was for at least a decade, I think. He married Mary Jane at last, quite a few years ago. So they were, Spider-Man's adventures continued.
Yeah.
Now he's a married man. So this guy always hated the fact that Spider-Man was married. I guess he thought it would be better for Spider-Man to be single and have these relationship issues to worry about, or whatever, for whatever reason. He didn't like MJ or didn't like the marriage thing.
Okay.
So he sets about writing this, or mandating this story where the marriage is retconned.
Yeah.
In universe. So there's a cosmic being named Mephisto, who's kind of like Satan in the Marvel universe. And he, some kind of deal with him where history is changed, but not. It's like everything's the same, but Spider-Man was never married. He couldn't, I guess for some reason, he didn't want to split them up. He wanted to retcon. So like all the adventures are the same. Canon is the same, but just imagine it all happened with Parker not being married. Like where the hell this guy's coming from? Why it matters that much. I don't know. But
yeah.
So that was the story. And the writer allegedly hated doing it and almost wanted to get his name taken off of it.
Wow.
Probably knowing that the outrage would be, it's just the worst kind of retcon, and people went crazy, and people still talk about it. This was 10 years ago, I think, or 5 years ago or something. And Peter is still unmarried, I believe, but in the comics.
Still leading the bachelor life.
Still leading that bachelor life, and there were two stories, and the story was called One More Day, I think. Brand New Day. Yeah. Some kind of deal, like to keep Aunt May alive, Spider-Man had to give up his history of being married. That's what it ended up being. And I read an article about it that talked about, like, in comics, Aunt May is like 90 years old. It's like, it's just weird, like just ill-conceived, strange, like someone with an axe to grind, or who wanted to sort of shoehorn in this notion of Spider-Man being single. Oh, and it's just sort of the poster child for bad retcons. Yeah.
This is interesting. I've got a name for it. I'm going to call this Trumped, because obviously the guy wanted to take Spider-Man back to these nostalgia days, the 80s or whatever, when Spider-Man was a particular way. So we've got, Mary Jane,
relationship issues.
Yeah, relationship issues, all that kind of stuff. So he wanted to take it back to the good old days, which is, same way Trump wants to retcon America into back to the 80s when Trump was, everything was going well for him. So that's an interesting way of looking at it. You want to take things back to the glory days. You think, we've gone on too far now. Don't really like the path we've navigated ourselves down. We want to go back. Want to go back to this stage. We don't want to do a whole reboot. We just want to reset to where I liked it better.
Yes. And I guess it changes a lot. With these comic book universes, obviously, and that article you were mentioning talks about this. That's where I got this from. Changes things because, he associated with other characters, and it just changes things in unforeseen ways. Like, okay, if this never happened, how could this have happened?
Yeah, and then you got the butterfly effect, basically.
You have a big mess. Yeah.
The whole
there have been sort of universal reboots, in-universe reboots done periodically in the DC connected universe and the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Crisis and stuff like that, trying to sort of restart, refresh everything when the universe starts getting too complicated. If you try to do it not completely, like keep some characters the same with their history and some rebooting them, that's where you get into trouble, I think.
Very complicated. Okay, so this is that whole thing we're talking about now with complicated histories and having to reboot things to make them simpler or whatever. This is a problem with Star Trek The Next Generation, they found out, and the spin-offs. So this excellent TV show went on for a long time, but it built up history, and this show is very concerned with canon, so things have to fit in universe. Everything has to make sense. Things are connected. But the more it went on, the more complicated all those connections became, and the harder it was for new fans to become interested in, because once you start getting interested in something, you have to you have to find out the history of it. You have to find out all these connections, where everything came from. So it was a bit of a higher barrier the longer that thing went on. So that's why they did things like Enterprise as an attempt to make it a show for, make it a bit easier for people to get started in the whole universe. But it didn't work.
I don't know if that's why they did Enterprise, if that was the motivation or not. But
well, I'm saying it is.
Yeah,
for this great cast.
I could say
I'm
they could have been thinking
that is the reason.
They didn't want to be held down by like all that continuity and have to worry about it. Or no, wait, well, but it's even tougher though. Like if you just go forward, why not just go forward 50 years? And then it sets you free, or set it in a different place, And when you go back in time, you're even more trapped because like you're sort of everything is a foregone conclusion.
That is true to some respect, but when you go back far enough, then you don't have to really worry about the future because that hasn't happened yet in the story. So you don't have to say, if you go back a small part, then you have to worry about it. But you're far enough back, you're 100 years back in time, then you don't really have to worry too much about what's going to happen in the future because those are things that haven't happened yet. The stuff that happens now really doesn't have any effect on what these characters are going to do because
it does though. I think they ran into trouble like wanting the Enterprise crew to there was a lack of creativity also, like they wanted a Ferengi on Enterprise. So, the Federation didn't encounter those aliens until Next Generation.
Yeah, they did have
so I think
they retconned that though in the end, like the meetings with the Klingons and stuff like that. They had to retcon that.
There's a whole political thing. Yeah, like there's planetary politics and like a long history that in Star Trek specifically, like I think set them up for trouble with the fans who are obsessed with canon.
Yeah, I basically didn't like it because it was for me, and we're getting out of the retcon thing again. But I'm just going to say, okay, so Enterprise was darker. So the whole thing about Star Trek and Star Trek Next Generation, whatever, it's always bright, always universal bright lighting. Everything is like almost pastel colored. Everything is. The stories are never too dark either. So the
DS9 got a little darker, but overall, yeah.
But it still has that brightness to it, physical brightness, and while the stories did get a bit darker, they were still very stylized. Whereas Enterprise started to get a bit more gritty, and that did not fit with the same kind of feeling. And we're getting away from retconning again. We're being nerds on Star Trek. Jeez.
Yeah, I haven't even watched any Star Trek in so long. So it's kind of fun.
Not years.
Think back, yeah.
We'll have to do a whole Star Trek.
But yeah, well, we'll try. Yeah, get to.
All right, retcons. Baines,
is that the end? Is that why you went off, or do we still have time?
We do. We had there are some people who actually did comments on this thing. So who did a really Bravo did a good comment about Highlander. Highlander is massively retconned, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, this was an enormously popular film. I don't know how the guy came up with the first Highlander film. He had some kind of bizarre idea about immortals. They have to cut off each other's heads and they live forever. Oh, we're tying into the last Quackcast about immortality here. So they get their heads cut off and that's the only way to kill them. And the story ended. It was like a very beautifully contained film. We begin with Connor McLeod and Ramirez or whatever. The Kurgan comes along and he's a bit of an arsehole, and then we get into the future and they have their big fight and it ends. And that's the story. He gains his ultimate power from the quickening and it's done. And then suddenly we have a sequel. You think, what the hell? The story was finished. It was complete. How does a sequel fit in? And the sequel completely retconned the first thing. So it was also the magic. Oh, we live forever. We're immortals. We don't even know we're immortal. We just, it happens when we accidentally kill, but we don't actually die. And oh my God, the quickening. It's this magical, mystical thing. In the second movie, suddenly, you're not really immortal. You're actually aliens and you exiled to Earth.
The aliens, that's right. I'm trying to remember. I thought they made them aliens. That's so kooky.
Yeah, they're aliens. And you were exiled because you wanted to revolt or something like that. And you weren't meant to come back because, you weren't meant to become immortal and achieve the ultimate prize and whatever. It's just really dumb. So that was...
Sounds like Scientology, kind of.
It was very Scientology. Very, very. Yeah. So that was completely retconned. And at least you had Michael Ironside. I think he was in that film as the new Kurgan character. So that was good. Because he was born to play that character, Ironside. With his gritty voice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was terribly... Then, not only did they do that, they did a third film, which no one saw. I haven't seen it. Which retconned their whole thing again. Then they did a TV series. So
which was... I saw a bit of it. It was horrible.
It was a good TV series. People loved it.
Okay, they did?
Yeah, people absolutely loved it. They wanted that to go on forever. They even wanted movies about it. Yeah, they had great actors in it. They had Roger Daltrey in it playing a role.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but hugely retcon. So back then, the whole idea of the original Highlander is, you have Connor Cloud played by Christopher Lambert.
Yes.
And he is this Highlander character. But in the TV series, he actually had a descendant of some other Highlander character working alongside him. And, we just never knew it. And, they tied it all in clumsily together. And actually, there were these watchers that all this time, there were Highlanders, but there were also this gang of people who were watching the Highlanders and killing them off. And it just doesn't fit. The whole thing is tangled up and it's wrong. And then they had another set of TV series about a female Highlander and, doing this and it.
Okay.
It was so horribly, horribly done. I think that's the best example of the worst retconning ever. But still actually being an entertaining show. So you haven't seen any of that?
No, not really. I think I saw part of an episode of the series.
It was actually not
the first two movies is awesome.
Not bad, yeah. Not bad for a terribly retcon thing. I think one of the weird things is with retconning, as you were talking about with the Chucks thing, is that, and we did touch on this to begin with, mentally you bridge the gaps and it becomes all right in some sort of way. Or you ignore it. Things that don't fit, you just ignore it and you pretend as if it was all right to begin with.
Yep.
Do they sort of play on that? Do writers, do you think they deliberately depend on the fact that you're going to do that?
This has nothing to do with retcons, but like as you say that, I'm like, that's a natural process. You kind of ignore inconsistencies or your brain just kind of fills in the blanks automatically, finds a way to get past it or explain it or just shrug it off. So a masterful creator does that. I remember watching Shutter Island, and I'm going to have to watch it again to see if I can, because I know I mentioned this before, but there's a moment, or maybe two, but definitely one moment where I was like, character inconsistency or some kind of weird inconsistency. I was like, a little sloppy, but in a fraction of a second, my brain was like, a little sloppy, forget it. Nothing's perfect. It's a movie. And in the end, it turns out that was a huge clue to what was really going on in that movie. And I was like, oh my God, gotta respect that. Like just genius, masterfully done. How would that apply to a retcon thing? Maybe you realize, I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but like you kind of realize that people will accept it. You just like tell people, look, this is the way it is, and let them accept it. And in a lot of cases, people will just accept it. Yeah. Like the soap opera thing with a different actor. It's like, all right. It's a little weird, but you just go with it.
Yeah, you do.
Well, basically have done that. Look at the James Bond, the Hulk in our modern Marvel Cinematic Universe has been played by 3 actors, and you go with it. Spider-Man. Well, that's different. Those are reboots, but the Marvel sort of fudges it. It's like, well, did the original Hulk movie happen? Did the second one happen? It's like, well, they could have.
They could have.
So you kind of just, if you want them to have happened, you can, or if you don't, like I don't, I'm like, okay, well, there was a better Hulk origin that was more like the comics. That's what really happened. Because, they're not re-showing the origin story. Whereas with Spider-Man, they showed it again. And in the new movie, they didn't show it, but the character is younger now. So,
all right.
It's a reboot. New Spider-Man was really good, by the way. Very, very good.
Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our buddy Michael Keaton, who we always talk about, was in it, and he was amazing. Really was. He was really, really good. Best Marvel villain so far.
He's gonna have to come back as Batman one day.
Yeah.
I want to see them retcon him back to being Batman again.
You know what I thought? I thought he could play the Joker. He'd be friggin' amazing at that. He's like, that's one of the character types he can do really well, the sort of scary, off the rails.
Yeah.
He does. He looks like an older Joker.
Well,
better than Heath Ledger. I don't know about that, but he could do it. He could be great.
It's like probably the same age Jack Nicholson was when he was the Joker.
Wow. Do you think is he up there? Maybe, actually. Could be.
Could be older now. I don't know. Jack Nicholson has an ageless face. So
yes.
Probably younger than you think when he was doing the Joker in 1989 or whenever that was.
Yeah, Michael Keaton, I think, probably looks younger than he is, too.
Yeah, so retcon that for us, Hollywood. Do it.
Yeah, retcon this! Come on, let's get a reboot on that horrible Joker you have in Suicide Squad. Forget
Jared
this.
Leto.
Yeah, that was awful. A little bit I've seen.
I have to see that. I haven't seen that. Yeah. So comic films are the worst for retconning.
I would say comic books are probably the worst. And if by worst you mean do it the most.
Yeah.
Just because of nature, the nature of
comics. They probably actually do it the best because they've had so much experience at doing it, so they know how to do it. So some of them do it really well. They must do.
Maybe, yeah.
I think
in a way the stakes are lower. And they do it, but they do it in a sloppy way a lot of the times.
Oh, yeah. And it's more culturally affecting, too, because we know these characters so well. Superman, people all know Superman, and they all get annoyed when he dies yet again for the millionth time. And then he comes back, and so that happens. The Hydra thing again. I'm never going to read Captain America, so what do I care? But
yeah, I don't really read them either. I just read about this stuff. Comics are too expensive, and it sounds like they don't know what the hell they're doing. Yeah. And from what I read, I'm like, I'm not spending money on this crap. Although I would buy some manga or some horror comics, but I'm talking like the Marvel mainstream superhero comics. DC apparently is doing really cool stuff, but the Marvel comics, as opposed to the movies, which are usually really good, DC, or I won't say usually good, but they're overall I think are good. The comics are apparently like crazy, like lame political agenda and just like crap. So at $6 a pop in Canada, I'm not buying those.
I'm not buying this crap.
This is a grumpy old man quest. Let's end this thing.
All right. So retconning is a difficult thing to manage, and we hate it. We're grumpy old men, and we hate it, don't we, Baines?
Would you ever retcon your...
Oh, sure.
I think it happens in webcomics all the time, probably. People want to do over.
I'll retcon the arse out of Pinky TA. I don't care. We've been talking about how bad it is. Jesus, I'll do it.
In my comic, I think Luckily, my comic is a comedy. I think if I did it, I would do it in the way that, like, well, I don't know. I was going to say the way The Simpsons did that episode where Principal Skinner was revealed to be someone else.
Oh, Jesus.
And a lot of people say, like, the Simpsons died at that moment. Like, that was the end of the good Simpsons.
Oh, they did worse than that.
Yeah, like, I never thought that episode was that bad. I was okay with it. With my characters, I don't think I would... I don't know. If I did something like that, I would be like, well, this is what really happened. And like, well, how does that explain, like, if that happened, how does that explain all these inconsistencies? I would just say, well, I do have an answer for you, but we don't have time to talk about that right now.
You'd say,
so let's
say deal with it, and then you'd flip the bird with both hands.
I'd make a joke out of it, like, let's never speak of this again.
The Klingons.
In a comedy, that would be, I think, acceptable. And it was acceptable in Deep Space Nine. But yeah, that's how I would do it.
Well, I would retcon, with all what I'm saying, I would be totally hypocritical. I would retcon Pinky TA, and I would say, bugger the fans. I want to do it how I want to do it.
You say what?
Bugger the fans. It does.
Oh, bugger the fans. Yeah.
I would, bugger them. But say The Simpsons, I think you can make an argument that it died. Well, it didn't die, but it changed in a negative way when they did. They showed Homer when he met Marge. One of the millions of episodes when they did Homer meeting Marge, but they did it as if it was in the 90s. So, as you're watching The Simpsons, this whole relationship couldn't have happened in the 90s because the damn a cartoon was done in the 80s or whatever, and so you'd think they had to meet each other in the 70s. And earlier episodes show that they did meet in the 70s. But,
right.
So they show it in the 90s. So Comer's at college or whatever, he's watching, R.E.M. are the big music band then, or grunge or whatever, and you think, oh my God, you wankers, you are trying to make this culturally relevant in a way that doesn't fit, and this is just awful. But they do kind of make a joke about it, but it still, like, ruins that suspension of belief.
Yeah, even in a silly comedy, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
It can ruin, because people fall in love with these characters and with certain aspects of the canon. I think you have certain things you can play with, certain things it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
To play with that.
The funny thing is with The Simpsons, because it's stuck in time, you've characters don't grow up. Bart stays in third grade, or I don't even know how old the children are, but they're quite young, and they stay that way. Maggie always stays the same. The baby never gets older. So you think it would make total sense for them to sort of change their origin story, to fit within like some other, to be more culturally relevant, to be in the 90s instead of the 70s. But then it doesn't, because the real way to do that is the whole time of the show is meant to be timeless.
Yeah.
So you don't make it culturally relevant to any particular time. Yeah, sure. Their earlier days are a stylized version of the 70s, but they don't implicitly say this is 1975 or 1977 or whatever.
Yeah, keep it more vague and not have too many specific references. I agree with that. Yeah, to keep it as timeless as possible. They usually do, but yeah, they get in trouble on those flashbacks.
So that's the way you should approach that kind of world without retconning it. It's
probably one of the few TV shows that's kind of like comics, because it's running for so long that does it, right?
Yeah.
Not many shows go. Yeah, exactly. I mean, a show that runs that long, like the characters would age. Like you wouldn't have that option of keeping everyone frozen in time like that.
Exactly. Yeah, you'd have to because people age, so you have to have new cast members,
or older.
Yeah, older.
older cast members. They open up a little sweet shop instead of being in school. They all still live together like the Facts of Life girls.
Exactly. Or you have characters die, and then you do have characters die in The Simpsons, but because they did die, like Phil Hartman is no longer the lawyer. Things like that, but they didn't implicitly say that he died. Mrs. Krabappel actually died, the actor, so they couldn't have her.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Although they could retcon it to be a different person all along. All right. So this has been Retcon number 2. I think it's interesting to talk about more of this stuff. It was
great. Yeah, it's an interesting subject.
These tropes and methods and things that we do in writing, I'm always interested. And we had an interesting talk about drawing before and developing skills and getting better. So maybe we could talk about that next week. I'm not sure. Because that was
be a great subject, as well. Yeah. I'm sure you would have a ton to contribute to us all.
Hopefully we'll have Pitface contributing, because she is...
she too, excellent.
She's way better artist than I am.
Tanzarine also.
Yeah, tons. Fantastic, interesting things that she's done. All right, so this has been Crackcast number 333. We've got the 3 3s, or the Quast. This has been Quast 9 or Crackcast 333.
Triple three. We're out.
All right, or cubed. All right, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.